My father was falsely accused of examination fraud, and I went to see Shane Lin 13 times. I never saw him once. The first time, because his childhood sweetheart had a quarrel with her husband, he went to pack her belongings and bring her to the capital. The second time, his childhood sweetheart couldn't adapt to the climate, so he was busy finding a doctor and preparing medicine, with no time to hear me finish a single sentence. Later, father was sentenced to exile in Meizhou, to depart in 3 days. Shane Lin finally agreed to see me. There's no turning back for your father's situation, and dwelling on it is pointless. The only thing I'm concerned about is Winnie. She's new to the capital and unfamiliar with everything, so please keep her company and chat with her. So, my father's life and death crisis was nothing more than a trivial matter to him, not worth dwelling on. I calmly handed over a divorce decree. No, let's get divorced. Shane Lin glanced casually at the divorce decree, then promptly took it and tore it up, scattering the pieces. Mingshu, are you testing me? No one wanted your father's misfortune, and I have no intention of kicking you while you're down, nor will I divorce you. I looked up at Shane Lin, unable to hold back a pang of sorrow in my heart. He knew everything. He knew about the failed scholar who stopped his sedan chair to falsely accuse father of imperial examination fraud. He knew that during this time, I had been running around for father's sake, seeking an audience with him, the Vice Minister of Justice, 13 times. He knew I was deeply distressed and would hold resentment toward him because of father's situation, yet he stood by and did nothing. I held back my tears. This isn't a test. Shane Lin sighed. He saw the glimmer of tears in my eyes, yet raised his hand to rub his own forehead. Is it because of Winnie then? These years have been hard for her. Her father passed away. She married the wrong man and has no one to support her. You've been cherished by both parents since childhood. You don't understand this feeling. I grew up with her and received guidance from her father. Mingshu, I cannot turn my back on her. His tone deepened, almost enunciating each word deliberately. I only ask this one thing of you. I beg you. Shane Lin was a man of strong principles. When he first entered the Imperial Academy, he offended the son of a senior minister and was assigned to copy documents for 6 months. Left out in the cold, he never begged me, nor did he ever beg my father. Until now, he asked me to spend more time with his childhood sweetheart from the countryside. I shook my head. With father being demoted and numerous arrangements to make before departure, I wasn't in the mood. Shane Lin seemed about to say more, but ultimately remained silent, stepping closer to wipe my tears. I turned my face away. His hand paused mid-air, fingers curling slightly, as if reluctant, his voice softening further. I'll accompany you to see your father off when the time comes. It's just a demotion. Many officials rise and fall in their careers. There might be a chance for reinstatement in the future. Don't worry too much. I froze, my lips trembling for a long moment without uttering a word. Just a demotion? That's Meizhou, a plague-ridden land where one might not survive. What does it matter how many officials rise and fall? I only have one father. Shane Lin didn't notice my distress. Concerned about Winnie, he came and left in haste, leaving me with his receding figure. Fortunately, there would be no when the time comes between us ever again. I wasn't lying to Shane Lin. I truly was busy making arrangements for father. The divorce was also genuine. The most urgent matter was sorting out my dowry and converting it into cash. Firstly, with father in prison, money could at least ensure better food and living conditions, sparing him some suffering. Secondly, since he was departing for Meizhou soon, such a long journey would require travel expenses. Thus, from early morning, I had been constantly occupied, checking inventory lists, examining quality, deciding whether to keep or pawn items, determining minimum prices for pawned goods, choosing between permanent or temporary pawns, and deciding how much to collect in silver bills versus loose silver. Maids and elderly servants came and went with verification tokens. At this critical moment, Winnie arrived. She brought a plate of crisp candy, claiming it was a specialty from Songjiang province that Shane Lin particularly enjoyed, made by her own hands, and invited me to try some. How could I have the time? I refused directly. I don't like sweets. You should go back. Winnie's eyes immediately reddened. Her long eyelashes fluttered. The small mole on her nose tip trembled, as if she had suffered the greatest injustice. Brother Xiaobai said, "If I ever felt lonely, I could come chat with you." Sister, do you not like me? Yes. My heart was surprisingly calm, without even a hint of disappointment. The things that matter to me, he never seems to remember. Winnie looked hurt. Sister, I ignored her, for the maids were bringing in the coral sculpture, my most prized dowry, priceless. Father had even joked, "If that Shainlin boy ever treats you poorly, we'll use this coral to knock him dead." Little did we know, his words would prove prophetic, and the coral would become Father's lifesaver. For the past 3 years, it had been stored in the warehouse. Its brilliance remained undimmed. I estimated it could fetch about 3,000 taels, enough to cover Father's expenses and leave some extra. Sister, this coral sculpture is truly beautiful. Where are you moving it? Let me help. Winnie offered. No need, I replied. I quickly instructed the maids to pull Winnie away, but she moved too swiftly, and being Shainlin's beloved, the servants dared not use much force on her, so easily that she reached out and touched the coral sculpture. With a twist, it broke. My vision went dark as I snatched the broken piece of coral sculpture and slapped Winnie hard across the face. Have you no brains? No ears either? When Shainlin hurried back, he saw Winnie with tears streaming down her face. He embraced her. She trembled helplessly in his arms. Brother Shane, I didn't know. I really didn't know. I just wanted to help sister. I never expected. Shainlin served in the Ministry of Justice and had judged countless cases. With just one glance, what had happened became perfectly clear. But at this moment, all he could see was the handprint on Winnie's face, the swelling of her cheek, and the tears that flowed straight into his heart. It's just a coral sculpture. Broken is broken. Mingshu, Winnie came to the capital from a small town. If there are things she doesn't know, you can teach her patiently. How can you resort to violence immediately? Is this the upbringing of your Yen family? I sneered, snatched up the teacup, and splashed it in Shainlin's face. Are you awake now? One shouldn't touch others' belongings without the owner's permission. Since when do I need to teach such basic manners? Shainlin didn't dodge the tea, his face now streaked with tea stains. Winnie screamed. She clung to Shainlin, sobbing loudly. Brother Shane, it's all my fault. Please don't argue with sister because of me. Shainlin gently patted her shoulder. For her, this proud man, was bowing his head to me. Mingshu, Winnie didn't mean any harm. She's still young and doesn't know better. Please don't make things difficult for her. I apologize on her behalf. Apology? What use do I have for such worthless words? I pressed forward step by step. I don't need your apologies. Whether she knows better or not has nothing to do with me. 3,000 taels. Shainlin, I want to see that money tonight, or I'll find a way to ruin her. The shock on Winnie's face was impossible to conceal. It was an enormous sum. An ordinary family's annual expenses wouldn't exceed 10 taels. Shainlin had just become a capital official, with expenses everywhere, yet he was too proud to use my dowry. Throughout the year, his salary flowed through his hands like water. Not a single coin was saved, but he didn't hesitate for long, wrapping his cloak around Winnie and leaving me with a single word. Fine. Leaving was simpler than I had imagined. It took only half a day to pawn the dowry, hire a carriage, and handle social obligations. When I returned to the residence, I saw the maid waiting for me in the courtyard. Shainlin had prepared the silver bills, but didn't come in person. I counted them, 3,000 taels. Exactly right, I had forgotten. Shainlin was no longer the poor scholar who had just arrived in the capital. He wouldn't buy me pearls to celebrate just because he'd earned a few hundred taels from writing commissions. He had long been promoted to Vice Minister of Justice and no longer worried about money. After putting away the silver bills, I returned to the study, wrote 2 letters, and went to the southeast courtyard. Sure enough, Shainlin was with Winnie. Madam, the master is handling official business and is not seeing anyone. The maidservant respectfully stopped me. Official business? But I clearly heard Winnie's voice. The courtyard gate wasn't fully closed, and through the gap, I saw that unbending man bending down, holding Winnie's face, carefully applying medicine for her. Winnie was wearing an apricot-colored dress, looking up at him, a perfect match. Madam, the maidservant stood helplessly behind me. I curl my lips slightly and handed over 2 letters. Receipt. Have Shane Lin sign it quickly so I can have the coral sculpture delivered. The maidservant was illiterate. She didn't know that of the 2 letters I wrote, only the top one was a receipt, while the bottom one was a divorce decree, delivered exactly as they were to Shane Lin. I thought Shane Lin would at least hesitate for a moment, but he didn't even look, hastily picking up his brush, signed, pressed his fingerprint. When I received the divorce decree, I suddenly felt a sense of relief. At 15, during the scholars' banquet, our eyes met in a fleeting glance. That was how Shane Lin entered my life. My father had mentioned his literary brilliance and sharp insights, saying his talents would benefit the common people, but he might not make a good husband. Young and naive, I believed I was special, that if I were obedient and behaved enough, I could melt this icy heart. But now, after 3 years of misplaced devotion in this marriage, it has finally come to an end. Back in the courtyard, I ordered the maids to take all the portraits of noble ladies Shane Lin had painted for me over the years and burn them in the backyard. A maid questioned, "But madam, weren't these your favorite paintings?" Indeed they were. I love these paintings. They say the brush is the eye of the lover. And Shane Lin loved painting me in all seasons, sitting, reclining, playing with cats, feeding fish. Back then, I thought, see, the dream man of every young lady had become my husband. We would paint each other's eyebrows and live in perfect harmony. But now, it's time to wake from this dream. There will soon be a new mistress here, so it's better not to let this catch her eye. The portrait of the lady was half burned when Shane Lin arrived. After father was imprisoned, I pleaded to see Shane Lin 13 times, but he never met me. I'm leaving, yet he came. Seeing the painting in the flames, Shane Lin visibly froze, instinctively ordering someone to douse the fire with sand and rescue the half-burned artwork. I spoke up. No need. Shane Lin clenched his fist, crumpling the paper in his palm, and asked, "Why?" "I don't like it anymore." Shane Lin looked puzzled, but then his gaze fell on my pack luggage, and he frowned slightly. "If you don't like it, forget it. I'll paint you a new one another day." But Ming Shu, Winnie has just arrived in the capital and has no friends. She lacks suitable clothes and jewelry for tomorrow's flower viewing banquet. Could you spare a couple of pieces for her? After all, you have plenty. You won't miss these few items. Shane Lin said this as if it were both obvious and utterly unreasonable. Before today, I had never met Winnie. We weren't close enough to exchange jewelry like intimate friends, nor did we share any childhood bonds. Why should I give her my things? No, there are plenty of clothing and jewelry shops. Why should I hand over my belongings to her? Shane Lin's face darkened. Because Winnie likes them. Do you even know? If it weren't for you, she should have. He didn't finish the sentence, cutting off abruptly, but in that instant, I guess what Shane Lin meant to say. If it weren't for me, Winnie should have married her childhood sweetheart. She wouldn't have ended up with the wrong person. She could openly enjoy everything Shane Lin had. She had endured so much hardship with him, so why wasn't she Mrs. Lin when he rose to success? Just Miss Winnie? So, I picked up the jewelry box and hurled it at Shane Lin with a crash. The pearl necklaces, jade bracelets, armlets, and waist pendants scattered across the floor. Take it all. Shane Lin watched for a long moment before crouching down and slowly gathering the jewelry back into the box. The jade bracelet was his gift during our first new year after marriage. He slipped it onto my wrist while we kept vigil, softly wishing me a happy new year and calling it my lucky money. The armlet was from him, the waist pendant too. All these were things he had personally given me. He took nothing back. His lips moved as if to speak, but ultimately he said nothing. Then he turned and left in anger. That night, I tossed and turned, suddenly recalling what everyone called our heaven. Made match. It was nothing but Shane Lin's endurance. 3 years ago, When father served as chief examiner and read his examination paper, he marveled at it, declaring outright that this young man was no ordinary talent. Indeed, during the palace examination, Shane Lin was named the top scholar. He was only 19 that year, neither arrogant nor humble, perfectly measured in his conduct. Dressed in crimson robes, he rode through the streets, capturing the hearts of countless young women, all because my father posed the couplet, "From blossom, bond is born." Shane Lin responded, "A faded bloom means no matchmaker's room," and thus this marriage was arranged. A faded bloom means no matchmaker's room, but these weren't Shane Lin's true feelings. He had always resented me, resented that my privileged family background had secured me the position as his wife, preventing him from marrying Winnie. I used to wonder why Shane Lin only painted me from behind in his artworks. On the rare occasions he depicted my profile, the tip of my nose was always blotted with ink. It wasn't until I came face to face with Winnie that I realized the wife in Shane Lin's portraits of elegant women had never been me. It was her. Indeed they were. How could someone as astute as Shane Lin not know how much I needed him during those times? I was merely a woman, unable to meet with the high officials in charge of justice. I could only spend money like water, trying to influence matters through pillow talk in the inner chambers and sending gifts to father. Yet, on the very day he learned of father's misfortune, he took leave from the capital and returned to his hometown in Songjiang. Who was in Songjiang? Shane Lin stayed in Songjiang for a month, his clothes soaked with Winnie's tears. She had not been well. The year he passed the imperial exams and married a noblewoman, she had tearfully wed a scholar. He helped her secure a divorce, even using his authority as Vice Minister of Justice to exert pressure. Yet, during the 3 months father was imprisoned, he never once came to see me. When I could no longer endure it, I wanted to beg Shane Lin to find a way for me to see father just once. He was the Vice Minister of Justice. A single word from him would suffice. But Shane Lin had just brought Winnie back to the capital, settling her in a small courtyard in the southeast. She was vomiting and had diarrhea, and he couldn't rest easy, staying by her sickbed, only sending a maid to relay a message. "Winnie is ill. I can't get away. I'll find you when I have time." That day, I waited for a long time, braving the wind all night, but he never came. The 3-section courtyard, walking from one end to the other, was only a few hundred steps. So, why did it feel like there was no end in sight? It was simply because Shane Lin had never intended to come to my side. The flower appreciation banquet was hosted by the wife of the Minister of Justice. She loved flowers, so the minister had specially set aside a plot in the residence to plant them with his wife. Every blooming season, invitations were sent to the noble women of the capital to enjoy the flowers and tea together. Normally, such a flower viewing banquet wouldn't be within Winnie's reach, but she expressed her desire to attend. Shane Lin had no choice but to busy himself preparing her attire and jewelry. He even prepared a set for me as well. It's made of fine Suzhou silk. The color and pattern suit your complexion perfectly. Madam, it shows the master truly cares for you. Please try it on. Madam, I smiled and shook my head, gesturing for her to leave the items. Does he really care for me? He's merely afraid Winnie might become the target of criticism. He cherishes her so much, he can't bear to see her suffer even the slightest harm. Taking precautions against all potential gossip. Go tell your master I won't be attending the flower viewing banquet. The maid looked astonished. Upon hearing this, Shane Lin rushed over, his face clouded with anger. Mavis Yen, what are you being difficult about? Can't you just get along with Winnie? Our eyes met. He suddenly paused for a moment, swallowing his unfinished words. Are you ill? No, Shane Lin. My father is departing for Meizhou today. I need to see him off. So, I won't be attending the flower banquet. These past days, he's been so preoccupied with Winnie that he forgot about my father's case. Forgot what day it is today, and even forgot his promise to accompany me to bid farewell to my father. He said, "This is Winnie's first banquet. She's timid. I must accompany her. Mingshu, your father can wait a little longer. After the banquet concludes, I'll go with you to see him off." With your father gone, I will become your support. Your future and honor all rest with me. Don't be afraid." As he spoke, he leaned forward as if to embrace me. I raised my hand to stop Shainlin. From outside, the maid urged, "Sir, it's almost time. Miss Winnie is waiting." "Winnie," I nodded. "Go ahead. She's waiting for you." Shainlin looked relieved, as he promised. "Once Winnie is settled, I'll rush to the docks." He turned and left. I took the valuables I had already packed, gathered the last portion of my dowry, loaded them onto the rented carriage, and left the Lin family, never looking back. Mother suffered terribly from seasickness. Therefore, we traveled by carriage overland, first to Yangzhou, then took a boat to Meizhou. Along the way, we happened to witness the beauty of Jiangnan in summer, which inspired Father's poetic spirit. He praised having a virtuous wife, then boasted about having a filial daughter. Finally, he bitterly cursed Shainlin. "Ungrateful wretch." Mother nodded vigorously. "No wonder his name contains by white. He must be the reincarnation of a white-eyed wolf." Shainlin had an upright but aloof personality, though he never asked for help. That didn't mean my father wouldn't secretly assist him. Otherwise, among all the veteran Hamlin scholars who spent their lives copying books, how did Shainlin alone manage to climb out in just 3 years? It's just a pity he wasn't worthy of it. I had always thought Father was angry because Shainlin refused to help, until one day when Father got drunk and sat on the deck, secretly crying. How could someone as wonderful as our Mavis be treated so poorly? That little beast. Next time I'll crack his skull open. My heart ached. It suddenly occurred to me that perhaps Father was regretting that if he hadn't given Shainlin that couplet at the banquet, we wouldn't have had to endure so much. I snatched the wine jug from Father and helped Mother escort him into the cabin. "Father, Mavis has no regrets. Marrying the wrong person wasn't our fault. It was just the wrong person." With both Father and Mother still by my side, whether I remain married or divorced, I will always be the treasured jewel of the Yen family. Mavis Yen, I will still love others, and I will always be worthy of being loved. 3 months later, we finally arrived safely in Meizhou. Father had been demoted to serve as an education officer here. Before we arrived, we were quite worried. For instance, would the miasma-filled environment with all its snakes, insects, and rodents be deadly? And with the fierce local customs in Lingnan, where education wasn't highly valued, would being an education officer be particularly difficult? But when we actually arrived in Meizhou, we discovered it was a wonderful place. Although the climate was hot and humid with many insects, our neighbors were very enthusiastic about teaching us pest control methods. There were many fruits here that we'd never eaten back in the capital. Most importantly, Meizhou's literary culture was astonishingly vibrant. Every 10 households in a town would have at least one school. Father took up his post with great delight. Mother and I worked together to fix up our new courtyard, planting beautiful flowers, delicious fruits, and embroidering lovely patterns. Meizhou was a small place, far from the capital. The embroidery patterns we casually created became highly sought after by the local ladies, who often invited us to visit under the pretext of discussing embroidery designs. They were always very curious, initially just politely asking about customs and lifestyles in the capital. As we became more familiar, they started probing further. How old is Mingshu? Is she married? If she's married, why don't we see her husband? Why did she come to Meizhou alone with her parents? Matters of romance always spark curiosity, but I hadn't clearly explained Winnie's situation to my parents. To outsiders, I just made up random stories. After my family fell into ruin, my ex-husband, who despised poverty and coveted wealth, drove me out of the house, leaving me with nowhere to go. I had no choice but to return to my parents. They sighed with deep sympathy. For women, life is often not in their own hands. Their honor and disgrace are tied partly to their fathers and brothers, and partly to their husbands. A family's decline should not affect a married daughter. Yet some ruthless families would have their wives and daughters meet sudden deaths. Those with kinder hearts might end up shaving their heads to become nuns, or retreating to family temples for spiritual practice. Thus, they treated Mother and me with more warmth. Knowing Father had been demoted and lost his salary, often inviting us over to embroider handkerchiefs and sachets to help make ends meet. They also shared summer fruits and winter charcoal with us. And so, the days passed one after another. Spring departed, and autumn arrived again. One day, after attending the coming of age banquet of the county magistrate's youngest daughter, Father counted on his fingers and realized we had been in Meizhou for 2 years. I was already 21. Father suddenly asked, "Mingshu, I fear I'll be stuck in Meizhou for life. After your mother and I are gone, what will you do?" In that one sentence, his fear was laid bare. I looked up at Father and noticed he had more white hair than when he first taught me as a child, and his back was more hunched than when he saw me off to my marital home. Father had aged. He feared both that I might marry the wrong person and end up in a messy life, and that I would struggle to stand on my own if left alone in the future. I smiled and said, "Then, let's meet him." In the spring, when I was 21, I met Dean Chun. That day, I was covered in dust, busy transplanting a budding flower into the soil in the corner of the yard. This type of flower prefers shade and moisture and shouldn't be exposed to too much sun. With my hands covered in dirt, I stood up abruptly and my vision went black. Dean Chun happened to steady me. As soon as I regained my balance, he immediately let go and stood respectfully before me. His face flushed red down to his neck as he explained, "I didn't mean to be improper. Miss, I just saw you about to fall and wanted to help. By the way, I'm a student from the county school, here to ask the teacher to review my essay. Is he home?" I found it amusing, but still pointed him in the right direction. "He's in the study." "Thank you, miss." He took a couple of steps, holding the essay, then turned back and stood before me. "Miss, my surname is Chun, Dean Chun." At first, I didn't take Dean Chun seriously. For one, his name sounded like a shepherd boy, giving the impression he wasn't very bright. For another, he was only 18, 3 years younger than me, but he was such an eager learner, visiting our home frequently, and he had great strength along with more patience than me when tending to flowers and plants. Which flowers bloom in which season, whether they prefer shade or sun, moisture or drought. He knew it all perfectly. Even an orchid I'd been trying to grow for a long time without success came back to life in his hands. I teased him. "Flower god." Dean Chun blushed again. No, just call me Dean, or you can call me Dean." Since he was younger than me, I started calling him Dean all the time, and how he addressed me changed from Miss to Mingshu. One day, he came to my home and happened to encounter my father introducing a young man for me to consider. The young man who used to only blush suddenly had red-rimmed eyes in front of me. "Mingshu, I want to marry you. I'd even be willing to marry into your family." I rejected him immediately. "I'm not some girl who likes pretty boys." "Dean, perhaps you don't know I was previously divorced. I know what marriage is like, and meeting potential matches isn't because I'm desperate to marry or find someone to rely on. I just want to put my parents at ease." Dean Chun seized on the key point. "So you won't marry him?" "Yes, because I agreed to meet people. My parents have been arranging many matchmaking meetings for me over the past 6 months. None of them worked out. Men are truly strange. Though they inherently want to climb socially, they pretend to be aloof. They barely have any learning in them, yet they show off their supposed talent in front of women. Once they learned my father had no hope of returning to office, they started putting me down. What's the point?" Dean Chun became cheerful again, and today he had specifically brought a flower seedling. "In the future, can I still come help you plant flowers? In the future?" I was truly struggling. Having rejected a man, I shouldn't get closer to him and give him hope. But his flower arrangement skills were so exceptional. Facing Dean's sincere and passionate gaze, even lies felt scalding hot on my tongue. Standing before him, the young man towered over me, and I could see his eyes clearly. They were filled with me. "Dean, in the future, you'll get married. Your wife won't want you always growing flowers for others. You should." Dean interrupted me with a sly smile. "Not necessarily. I didn't promise Dean anything, but I couldn't bring myself to firmly reject him either. He didn't get discouraged. Our lives continued exactly as before. He came to consult Father, helped me with gardening, and occasionally casually inquired about my potential marriage prospects, only to gossip about them behind their backs, until another year of the imperial examination came, when several provincial scholars set themselves on fire at an inn as a warning. Someone had obtained the questions in advance, paid them to write the answers, and stolen the official scholar titles. And this wasn't the first time they'd done this. This case involves many parties, and His Majesty has ordered a reinvestigation into the imperial examination fraud case. Father, you've been exonerated. Father had already prepared to spend the rest of his life in Meizhou. When the news came, I was somewhat stunned. 3 years can truly change many habits. For instance, we've grown fond of making soup and have come to appreciate Meizhou's humid, hot climate where flowers and plants thrive beautifully. But the letter arrived first, and palace officials will soon come to escort Father and Mother back to the capital. No matter how reluctant we are, we must still say goodbye. Dean had composed himself before meeting me. He stood in my small garden, discussing which flowers were hardy enough to be potted and taken to the capital. Those that wouldn't survive the journey would remain in Meizhou, where he promised to look after them for me, just as he does now. I looked at him and asked a foolish question. Dean, won't you ask if I'm willing to stay? Huh? Dean had never considered this possibility. Kneeling in the flower bed, he smiled and said, "There's no need. Mingshu, you were never from Meizhou to begin with. You came here for the master. Now that he's been cleared, of course you must return. But can you wait for me 3 years? The imperial examination is held every 3 years, and he doesn't need me to stay. He intends to take the exam in the capital." Just as I was about to speak, a familiar male voice suddenly came from behind me. Mingshu. I turned around. I was very surprised. I truly hadn't expected Shane Lin to come looking for me. Someone like him. Shouldn't he have sneered at my departure, mocking me for not knowing my place, and then held Winnie, telling her my leaving had nothing to do with her, before happily getting married? It wasn't until he strode forward, grabbed my wrist, and pulled me back abruptly that I snapped out of it. I withdrew my hand and bowed politely. Minister Lin, as high and bright as the sun and moon, as close and distant as husband and wife. After 3 years apart, Shane Lin had changed greatly. He was no longer aloof and unapproachable, but rather like cold tea, his demeanor more complex and muddled. Likely, it was brewed from the setbacks and hardships he'd faced in officialdom, through ups and downs. However, this had little to do with me anymore. I pointed the way for him. Father is in the study. Then I introduced to Spring Flute. This is Minister Lin from the capital, probably here to see my father on business. What you just mentioned. Shane Lin interrupted me. Mingshu, there's already an imperial envoy with your father. This time, I've come for you. 3 years ago, I waited for you all night at the dock, but you left the capital without a word. Only later did I discover you tricked me into signing the divorce decree. The divorce was never my intention. I was puzzled. Shane Lin, don't you find these words ridiculous yourself? Is this because of Winnie? You know perfectly well I was orphan young and raised with kindness by Winnie's father. When he passed away, I had no choice but to care for her. Just because I was distracted looking after Winnie when your father faced trouble, you divorced me? What kind of reasoning is that? I stared directly at Shane Lin and spoke calmly. Yes, you had your reasons, because Winnie was your childhood sweetheart. Her father had shown you kindness, so everything about her mattered more than me, more than my father. That's why you could abandon me when my father was falsely accused, leave everything in the capital behind, and go fetch her when she was in conflict with her husband. That's why you could tend to her when she was suffering from the climate, leaving me waiting in vain all night when I had nowhere else to turn, simply because I married you. It's as if I'm naturally inferior to her. You always tell me to yield, to take a step back. But why? Shane Lin, I owe you nothing, and I owe her even less. In the 3 years since coming to Meizhou, I've thought through many things. I used to despise Winnie intensely. I hated her for coming between Lynn and me. I hated that she never had troubles earlier or later, but always when my father was in crisis. I hated that in Lynn's eyes, she was always more important than I was. It was only later that I realized the one I should despise is Lynn. If he hadn't repeatedly given Winnie hope, she wouldn't have been so terrified of losing him, nor would she have regretted marrying someone else. He made her entertain countless wild fantasies. In an instant, Lynn's face turned extremely pale, his lips quivering. He wanted to explain. Ming-Shu, I only see her as a sister. It's merely a brother's care for a sibling. I came to take you back. 3 years ago, you resented me for abandoning your father. This time, I personally cleared his name. Can you come back to me so we can start over? I laughed out loud. Lynn, that's your duty as Vice Minister of Justice, not something done for me. If you really can't let go, you can think of me as a sister too, since I'll never marry you again. I smiled cheerfully, feeling not a ripple of emotion inside. So, this is what it means to let go of someone. No joy or sorrow over them, not even hatred. They become just another face in the crowd. Turning away, I told Undy to join me in digging up flowers tomorrow. A faint sound came from behind. I'm sorry. With Lynn's arrival, the official circles in Meizhou were abuzz, and many were inquiring about him. Except for Undy, he helped me sort out the flower seedlings, much quieter than usual. Undy remained silent, and I held back too. Finally, he couldn't hold back. Ming-Shu, do you think I'm useless? With Lynn setting such a high standard, excelling in studies, even topping the imperial exams, his match with Ming-Shu praised by everyone. No wonder she hadn't agreed to him. What right did he have to ask her to wait 3 years for him? Under the moonlight, I found Undy utterly adorable. I leaned in closer, rose on my toes, kissed his forehead. Of course not. Someone who loves you will only see perfection in everything about you. I hadn't expected this scene to be completely witnessed by Lynn. Before he could speak, I spoke first. Lynn, you have no right to control me or meddle in my life. Think carefully before speaking. Consider whether I want to hear it. He pressed his lips together. Ming-Shu, is there really no chance for us anymore? Yes. Lynn smiled bitterly for a long moment before suddenly saying, you never treated me like this before. It took me a long time to realize that perhaps what he meant was to kiss him like I kissed Undy. Actually, there were moments, many times, I wanted to rush into his arms, stand on tiptoe, to kiss his chin, act coquettishly toward him. But back then, Lynn had just entered the Imperial Academy and would always coldly push me away. But now, none of that matters anymore. Is that so? Then I wish you meet a girl who shares your feelings in the future. I should be going now. Excuse me. I lost patience, walked around Lynn, just as he used to do, leaving only my back to him. Father picked an auspicious day to set off back to the capital. When we traveled south from the capital to Meizhou, we had only 3 or 5 trunks, traveling light, but returning north from Meizhou to the capital, we filled an entire boat with boxes large and small. Fortunately, the residence that was sealed during our exile was returned to us after our vindication. Father had written to an old friend beforehand, asking him to help manage it. After disembarking, our belongings were moved directly home. The house remained largely unchanged. Even my boudoir was just as it had been before my marriage. I stood in the courtyard. How wonderful. After returning to the capital, invitations to banquets came pouring in like snowflakes. But I didn't attend any of them. I needed to tend to my flowers. Father had specifically mentioned in his letter that his old friend had reserved a plot for planting. The climate and soil from Meizhou to the capital were completely different, so I couldn't rush into transplanting them. First, I had to check the soil. The courtyard hadn't been inhabited for too long, and the soil had deteriorated. It needed thorough loosening and several days of fertilizing. This then involved conditioning the soil quality. After being busy for nearly half a month, I finally had time to go out. I randomly picked an invitation. It turned out to be from the Minister of Justice's household. On the day of the banquet, I brought a beautiful pot of gladiolus as a gift. The minister's wife's eyes lit up. She smiled from ear to ear. Oh my, such a difficult flower to grow. and you've cultivated it so well. Coincidentally, I have an orchid that's blooming too. Come help me take a look." I followed her to see the flowers while listening to her talk about Shainlin. Only then did I learn that when I left the capital years ago, I had owed her a flower appreciation banquet. That time, Shainlin had accompanied Winnie to the banquet, but Winnie wasn't well received. Her background is too humble. She doesn't fit in with the other ladies. She's said to be Shainlin's relative, but Mrs. Lin isn't her. Thus, that day Winnie tried several times to seek Shainlin's help, but he, having heard something unknown, overturned a teacup. He ignored Winnie, entrusted her to the maid to take home, and himself leaped onto his horse and sped away. Minister Lin searched for you all night at the docks, only believing you had left. When he saw the divorce decree he had signed with his own eyes, he fell gravely ill, missing court for half a month, reportedly to go looking for you. But that sister in his household quarreled with him endlessly, insisting on marrying him. Yet he declared Mavis Yen was his only wife in this lifetime, and he would never remarry. Clearly, he holds you in his heart. The Minister of Justice is Shainlin's superior, so it's quite natural for his wife to speak up for him. I didn't argue back, just smiled faintly. "Madam, the orchid's roots are a bit suffocated. Just water it less. If the roots rot, not even a divine healer could save it." On my way back from the banquet that day, Winnie stopped my carriage. She wasn't doing well. This wasn't about material comforts. Shainlin never shortchanged anyone financially, but her complexion was poor, with worry etched between her brows. She bore the look of someone life had treated unkindly. "Miss Yen, may I speak with you? Just a few words." I thought there was nothing to say between us from start to finish. If not for Shainlin, our paths might never have crossed in this lifetime. "No need. I have no interest in you two." But Winnie spread her arms to block the carriage, then rushed to cling to the window, tears falling in large drops. "But I truly don't know what to do anymore. Miss Yen, besides you I know no one in the capital. I have so much to say, but don't know who to tell. I think I might be dying. I can't sleep night after night, and every time I dream, it's of you. Since you left, Brother Shane refuses to see me. I really don't know what to do." Winnie was speaking incoherently, and I thought about it. She seemed like just a 20-year-old girl. She had come to the capital from a small town, like a drowning person. The only life raft she could cling to was Shainlin. Seeing that I hadn't moved, she continued, "Actually, those things weren't my true intentions. I was just too scared. I had to do it that way. I was afraid that Brother Shane wouldn't love me, afraid he would abandon me too. I'm sorry. I was wrong in the past. Sister, please teach me. What should I do?" I handed her a handkerchief. "If you want to ask me how to make Shainlin marry you, I don't know. But if you're willing to hear something else, you could go see Imperial Avenue. Life is said to be very short. There's no need to tie yourself to just one man." Winnie was taken aback and lowered her arms. The carriage rumbled past her. Through the carriage curtain, I saw her crouch down and hug herself, a very small figure. It was a long time later that I saw Winnie again. By then, she had already opened a pastry shop on Imperial Avenue, specializing in Songjiang crispy candies, along with some other local specialties from Songjiang. Working with food was truly a laborious task, but Winnie was not afraid of hard work. She was quite skilled at it, busy and bustling, yet a smile graced her face. That day, she didn't notice me. I had someone buy a plate of crispy candies, and the snack I had missed years ago was now before me again. Sweet, just like our lives. After father returned to the capital, he could be said to be in the emperor's favor, rising swiftly in his career. However, after the experience of being demoted, he had less obsession with promotions. The only maneuver he ever made was to promote Shainlin in name but demote him in reality, sending him to Yuanzhou. That place was far from the capital. If he couldn't achieve anything there, he would never return to the capital in this lifetime. Shainlin had no complaints. Before he left, he returned the coral sculpture to the Yen residence, saying it was originally part of my dowry, and now it was being returned to its rightful owner. I don't know what method he used, but he reattached the broken branch making it appear intact from a distance. Up close, however, cracks were visible. Father stood with his hands behind his back before the coral sculpture and sighed. Any regrets? No. Father regretted it, saying if he'd known earlier, he would have cracked his skull open before he left. But now it's too late. I linked arms with Father and smiled. Too late is too late. Because the right person always comes at just the right time. Another round of the imperial examination began, and Father wisely declined to serve as an examiner. I tended to the flowers in the garden, waiting for the young man who had promised to return in 3 years to arrive in the capital. In the distance, there seemed to be some commotion. I looked up. The boy had grown into a young man, dashing toward me, his long shadow trailing behind. I'm here. Ming Shu. Extra story, Shane Lin's perspective. Shane Lin experienced many ups and downs throughout his official career. He achieved the top score in the imperial examination at 19, was assigned to Yuanzhou at 26, starting as a county magistrate and rising through the ranks to become prefect and then regional governor. His administrative accomplishments were outstanding. The year he returned to the capital, he was already 40. He still carried an elegant and refined appearance, with a gaze that held the depth of mountains and seas. Yet, he had no woman by his side to attend to his daily needs. Lord He, the former Minister of Justice, invited him for a drink and asked, "Still thinking about her? Is she really that good? Is it impossible without her?" They both knew who he was referring to. In his most desperate year, Shane Lin had even asked Lady He to mediate. Yes, without hesitation, Shane Lin admitted that he hadn't known what was so special about Ming Shu at first. When they were newly married, she had many habits he couldn't stand. Indeed, she came from a privileged background, never having suffered hardship, and was raised with a pampered temper. She loved to laugh. But how could there be so many good things in the world to make her laugh? Just because she had a powerful father? This marriage had been mismatched from the very beginning. Shane Lin looked up to her. There was an unbridgeable gap between them. He wanted to love her properly, but couldn't overcome the thorns in his heart, where wild horses rampaged, each one screaming, "Why? Why is she so perfect? Why does she effortlessly attain what I've struggled so long to reach?" Shane Lin was so peculiar, so unlikable, doing things he knew full well would hurt her. Yes, he did it intentionally. He basely thought this would pull her down from her high branch. She would no longer be the noble lady above him. She would become as lowly as he was. Her entire life's honor and disgrace depended solely on him. So when her father was imprisoned, Shane Lin's first reaction was relief. Her support was gone. He immediately brought Winnie back, deliberately avoiding Ming Shu to let her suffer a bit and temper her character, to teach her how to lower her head. He told himself he had only married Ming Shu under pressure of power. It was Winnie who had grown up with him. He desperately compensated Winnie, justifying it as repaying kindness. But there was a more hidden reason. In his eyes, Winnie was like him, people who could never hold their heads high before Ming Shu. But everything that followed spiraled out of his control. Ming Shu abandoned him and never looked at him again. Only then did he realize he was wrong. What he truly wanted wasn't her submission. What he wanted was her love. Shane Lin mistook her bowed head for love. He recalled their newlywed days, filled with tender affection. Her back narrow and slender as she loved experimenting with peculiar dishes in their small kitchen. He would lean against the doorframe, watching her with a smile. Truly, those were the finest days of his life. Later, as Shane Lin rose higher in official rank, all women, like Winnie, gazed up at him with admiration, yet he felt no stirring in his heart, only weariness. He couldn't let go of Ming Shu. Even after leaving the capital, he kept inquiring about her news. He knew she had married Dean Shen. He knew he was just a minor scholar, uninterested in officialdom. The couple both loved gardening and traveling, journeying far and wide, eventually compiling a book titled The Compendium of Wonder Blossoms. It meticulously documented each type of flower, its appearance, blooming season, habits, and care methods. When Shane Lin got hold of the book, a few words sprang to his mind. She is well, but she would never be his again. His heart felt hollow, That void could never be filled. In the distance came the clamor of gongs and drums, a wedding procession, with the groom beaming atop a tall horse. If only this life could start over.